The desert did not forgive weakness. It only waited for it. The sun was sinking behind the red cliffs when Elijah Cole saw the shape lying beside the dry arroyo. At first, he thought it was a coyote, too still, too small. Then the wind shifted, carrying a sound so faint it barely deserved to be called a cry, more like a breath trying not to die. Elijah slid down from his horse, boots crunching on sun-baked stone. He hadn't planned to be out this far from his ranch. Trouble had a way of finding men who wandered alone, especially in Apache land. But something in that sound pulled him forward, the way a hand might grab a man's heart without asking permission. The child was no more than 7, skin stretched tight over bone, lips cracked and bleeding, dark hair matted with dust. The boy's eyes fluttered open for a second, just long enough to show terror and then trust before rolling back again. Elijah swallowed hard. He had buried enough people in this desert to recognize the look of someone standing on the last thin line between life and death. "Easy now," he whispered, though the child couldn't hear. He poured the last of his water onto a rag and pressed it gently to the boy's mouth, letting a few drops slip past cracked lips. Not too much. Too fast would kill him. Elijah knew the risks. Helping an Apache child could get him branded a traitor by his own kind, or worse. But leaving him here would mean certain death. He wrapped the boy in his coat, lifted him carefully, and set him across the saddle. The horse snorted, uneasy, as if it too understood what crossing this line meant. As Elijah turned toward home, he spoke aloud, not to the child but to the empty desert. "If you're watching, I ain't your enemy." The ride back took hours. The child drifted in and out of consciousness, fingers clutching Elijah's shirt like it was the only solid thing left in the world. When they reached the ranch, the sky was black and starless. Elijah's cabin was small, worn, and lonely. It had been that way since his wife died 3 winters ago. He laid the boy on the bed, lit a lamp, and worked through the night. Broth, water, clean bandages, quiet words. Prayers he hadn't spoken in years. At dawn, the boy opened his eyes fully for the first time. They were sharp now, watchful. Apache eyes. The child didn't speak, but he studied Elijah like a trapped animal measuring a threat. Elijah stepped back, raising his hands slowly. "You're safe here," he said. "I won't hurt you." The boy's gaze flicked to the door, then the window, mapping escape routes even in his weakness. Finally, in a voice barely louder than the wind, he whispered a single word. "Dakota." Elijah nodded. "That's your name?" The boy nodded once. For 4 days, Elijah nursed Dakota back from the edge. Each day the boy grew stronger and more guarded. He spoke little, but he watched everything. On the second night, Elijah caught him trying to slip out the door, swaying from weakness. "Your people'll come," Elijah said gently, blocking the door. "But not if you die on the way." Dakota hesitated, then sank to the floor, shoulders shaking. It was the first time Elijah saw him cry. On the 4th morning, the wind changed. Elijah felt it before he heard anything, the weight in the air, the silence of the birds, the way the horse stamped nervously. He reached for his rifle out of habit, then stopped himself. A knock came at the door, 3 sharp strikes. Elijah opened it slowly. 3 Apache women stood outside. They were not armed like warriors, but they were no less dangerous for it. One was older, her hair streaked with silver, eyes deep and unblinking. The second was tall and fierce, scars lining her arms. The third was younger, her face tight with fear and fury braided together. The older woman spoke first. "You have our child." Elijah stepped aside. Dakota appeared in the doorway, whole and alive. The sound the women made was not a word. It was something older, something torn from the chest. The youngest rushed forward, dropping to her knees and pulling the boy into her arms, sobbing openly. The tall woman's eyes never left Elijah. 4 days, she said. 4 days we searched. We found blood. We found tracks leading nowhere. Elijah nodded. I found him dying. The older woman studied Elijah for a long moment. Then she stepped inside the cabin, uninvited but unafraid. "You fed him," she said, touching the clean bandages. "You did not sell him. You did not leave him." Elijah met her gaze. "He's a child." Silence fell heavy between them. Finally, the older woman spoke words Elijah would never forget. "Kindness creates deaths. The desert never forgets." Before they left, she turned back. "Our people are watching you now, rancher." Elijah nodded once. "I figured." As they disappeared into the hills, Elijah felt it, the sense that his life had just crossed a line it could never uncross. And that was only the beginning. If this story is pulling you in, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and share this story with your friends, because what comes next will change everything. 4 nights later, the ranch burned. Elijah woke to smoke and the scream of his horse. He burst from the cabin, rifle in hand, heart slamming against his ribs. Flames licked the barn walls. Shadows moved beyond the firelight. Too fast, too many. Raiders, not Apache. Elijah fired once, dropping a man near the fence. A bullet tore through his shoulder in return, spinning him to the ground. Pain exploded white-hot, stealing his breath. As boots closed in, Elijah thought one thing, bitter and clear. So this is how debts get paid. Then the night answered with a sound that froze blood. A war cry. Figures emerged from the darkness, not raiders but Apache women and warriors, moving like ghosts through flame and smoke. Arrows flew, knives flashed, the attackers broke screaming, vanishing into the desert. Elijah lay on the ground, vision blurring. The older Apache woman knelt beside him. "We told you," she said calmly. The desert remembers. The younger woman, the boy's mother, pressed a cloth to his wound, hands shaking. "You saved my son," she whispered. "Now we save you." They carried him into the hills before dawn. For days, Elijah drifted in fever between life and death, Apache voices around him, strong hands refusing to let him fall. When he finally woke, the world was different. He was no longer alone. He had crossed into a story bigger than himself, one of blood, loyalty, and a bond forged not by words, but by survival. And far away, men who hated such bonds were already planning their revenge. The desert was watching, and it was not finished. Pain returned before memory. It crept into Elijah Cole's body like fire moving through dry grass, slow at first, then everywhere at once. His eyes fluttered open, and the world swam in blurred colors, brown earth, blue sky, shadows moving like spirits. The smell hit him next. Smoke, herbs, blood, and something sharp and clean he didn't recognize. Voices murmured around him. Apache voices. His hand twitched toward where his rifle should have been. A firm grip stopped him. "Do not fight," a woman's voice said, low and steady. "You are not among enemies." Elijah forced his eyes to focus. The older Apache woman sat beside him, grinding leaves between stones. Her face was calm, carved with years and wisdom. The same woman who had stood in his doorway 4 days earlier. "You should be dead," she added without cruelty. "The bullet missed your heart by the width of a finger. The fire did not take you. That means something." Elijah tried to speak. His throat burned. "Water," he rasped. A gourd touched his lips. He drank slowly, the coolness dragging him back from the edge. When his vision cleared, he saw where he was. An Apache camp tucked into red stone, hidden so perfectly it looked like the land itself had folded over it for protection. Women moved quietly. Children watched him with wide, curious eyes. Warriors stood at the edges, alert, hands never far from weapons. Elijah swallowed. "Why am I alive?" The old woman met his gaze. "Because a child is alive." Memory surged. Back. The starving boy, the 4 days. The knock on his door, the fire, the gunshot. "Dakota," Elijah whispered. A small shape stepped forward. Dakota looked stronger now. Cleaner. His eyes were sharp again, but something had changed. He wasn't afraid of Elijah anymore. The boy knelt beside him and pressed a small carved stone into Elijah's hand, a symbol etched deep into it. "Protection," the boy said softly. "My mother says it is now yours." Elijah's chest tightened. He closed his fingers around the stone. "I didn't save him for payment," Elijah said. The boy's mother stepped forward then. Her name was Ayanna. Her voice carried both steel and sorrow. "No," she said. "You saved him because your heart is not empty. That is rarer than gold." Night fell. The campfires flickered. Elijah drifted in and out of sleep as the Apache women tended his wound with a care that felt almost unreal. Fever took him again, dragging him through dreams, his wife's face, the barn burning, Dakota lying pale in the dust. Each time he stirred, someone was there. On the third night, the old woman spoke again. "Men are coming," she said. "The ones who burned your ranch." Elijah forced himself upright despite the pain. "They won't stop." "No," she agreed. "They hunt us both now." Ayanna's jaw tightened. "They believe Apache lives are cheap. They believe kindness is weakness." Elijah looked at the people around him, the women, the children, the quiet strength in every movement. "They're wrong," he said. At dawn, Apache scouts returned with grim news. Armed men, many of them, bounty hunters and soldiers mixed together. They wanted land and blood. Elijah stood, swaying but determined. "They'll kill every one here," he said. The old woman shook her head. "Not if the land hides us. Not if we fight smart." Elijah exhaled slowly. "I know these men. I know how they think." Ayanna studied him. "Then you will stand with us." It wasn't a question. Elijah nodded. They moved before sunset. The camp vanished as if it had never existed. Fires buried, tracks erased, the desert swallowed them whole. Elijah rode with them, pain biting deep, but purpose holding him upright. When the attackers came, they found nothing. Then the arrows fell. The ambush was fast, silent, brutal. Men screamed, horses bolted. Panic shattered discipline. Elijah fired only when he had to, heart pounding, not as a rancher now, but as part of something older and stronger than fear. By dawn, the desert was quiet again. Bodies lay scattered. The survivors fled. Elijah stood among the Apache, bloodied but alive, realizing something that settled deep into his bones. He no longer belonged to the life he had lost. That night, Ayanna sat beside him as the stars burned overhead. "You cannot return to your ranch," she said softly. "They will come again." Elijah nodded. "I know." She hesitated, then spoke words heavy with meaning. "Stay." The word hung between them, fragile and powerful. Dakota leaned against Elijah's side, already claiming him as something permanent. Elijah looked at the fire, at the people who had saved his life as surely as he had saved a child's. "For the first time since my wife died," Elijah said quietly, "I don't feel alone." The old woman watched from across the fire. "The desert has chosen," she murmured. Far away, men who hated this unity were regrouping, sharpening their rage. But here, under the stars, a broken rancher and an Apache family stood bound by something stronger than blood. And the desert remembered everything.